let me welcome you to today MSME Clinic. Okay, so MSME Clinic is an opportunity for us to discuss the issues that plague our MSMEs today. Okay, so, and today we're in an era of high inflation and in the era of currency devaluation. Okay, don't forget that there are quite a number of environments that affect the MSMEs. Okay, there is the microeconomic environment, and there is also the macroeconomic environment. So today, we're going to be looking at 5 ways SME can stay relevant in the era of high inflation and currency devaluation. Under this environment, you're talking about high prices of commodities. Okay, so when you talk about currency devaluation, it means that free market is allowed to play, and SMEs are allowed to go and source for their forex from the official and the what is often called the black market. So today, MSME Clinic will look at 5 ways. What are those 5 ways? Okay, so we'll itemize them one by one. Then we now come to discuss in details as they affect you. But don't forget, we're going to introduce a concept today that let's talk about. That is the concept of nano enterprise or nano entrepreneurs. Okay, we're going to bring in this concept today because recently a national MSME policy has just been launched. Okay, and that talks about what we now talk about nano enterprise. We're talking about micro enterprise. Then you talk about small enterprise, and now talk about the medium enterprise. So that's how you arrive at the N MSMEs. Okay, so if you take away the N and the M, you have SMEs. Okay, so quite a number of people know about the concept of SME, but the national policy of MSME now talks about the nano, it talks about the micro, it talks about the small, and it talks about the medium enterprises. Okay, so the 5 ways, I quickly itemize them. Number 1, you talk about observing the corporate governance. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is that MSME must begin to equip themselves with the newly launched national policy of MSMEs. Then, of course, CEOs should be able to be properly licensed and face a regulatory environment so that as government agents, they will now know how to be able to relate with them at the end of the day. Okay, so number 4 talks about exploring opportunities for loan, grants, and other form of financing activities. Okay, if you take a survey of most SMEs and ask them what are the challenges that are facing you, they will tell you that number 1 is finance. Even though we have been able to debug that under our advanced entrepreneurship platform. Okay, but today let's assume that finance is a major headache. Okay, you want to have access to loan, you want to have access to grants and other form of financing activities. And of course, number 5, we'll be able to discuss the advertising guidelines, how it affects MSMEs, and how they should be able to play so that they don't fall short of the law. So those are the 5 ways the SMEs can stay relevant today. So we start by looking at number 1. And number 1 is you need to observe a high corporate governance environment. Okay? So what do we mean by that? Today, whether you are nano, whether you are micro, whether you are small, or whether you're a medium enterprise. So I ask you one basic question. Do you have a board in place? Okay? So some people may say, look, my talk sounds very elitist. So corporate governance enables you to put business processes. It enables you to set rules and regulation for you to become very transparent and for you to begin to look at future growth of your enterprise. Every entrepreneur must have what I regard to as the growth mindset. Okay? So if you give back to a child today, and that child after a year is supposed to work and that child is not working, it will be of a concern to you. So if you have set up an enterprise today and that enterprise is not growing, then there is a fundamental issue. And that's why we talk about the issue of corporate governance. And our advice is that put a board in place. Okay? So that board could be advisory, whether you are nano, whether you are small. Make sure that you have a board of at least 3, 5, 7 based on your growth trajectory. Okay, so at initial stage you're having a board, an advisory board that you're not paying, but on a quarterly basis they meet to be able to share ideas with you. Okay, and once those ideas begin to work and you get to the point where you begin to make money, why not? You can have a policy to be able to say, okay, you want to be able to pay sitting allowance, okay, and you can get to the point with the board where you say, look, if you give me an idea that gives me this amount of money, you get a certain percentage. At that point, the board will explode to give you those ideas. So we're saying there must be a framework for you to be able to have good corporate governance, okay, covering areas such as the board practices. There is something called the committees. You have audit committee, for example, that reports directly to the board, okay? You have risk management committee, okay? And we urge all enterprises that, look, for you to run a successful enterprise, you must be able to identify all the risks and be able to see how you can manage those risks so that they don't become your abattoirs at the end of the day. So, stakeholder relationship and family governance, okay? The way you behave, you should be able to separate your money, your salary, your money from that of the organization. Okay, so don't forget that, look, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, make sure that you put yourself on salary. The moment you are set out to start running an organization, the money of that organization is now different from your own money. So there must be ability for you to put in place a proper board for you to be able to start working specifically. Then who are the regulators when it comes to corporate governance? You have institutions like the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, as popularly the FROCN. Okay, they set up those framework for you to be able to follow. Okay, don't forget you have the CAC with their CAMA, that's the Company and Allied Matters Act. Okay, then there is a guild of directors. All these bodies ensure that corporate governance for every entrepreneur is put in appropriate place. Okay, so if you're starting as a nano enterprise and you grow to a small enterprise and from there to small to medium, then you must ensure that you do the appropriate thing. It gets to a point where your company from medium becomes a large company, just as you have with Dangote today. You have all the GT banks of this world, you have all the United Banks of Africa of this world, you have all the Zenith Bank. Okay, it gets to a point where your company will even have to even go public. It becomes from a limited liability company, it becomes a PLC. That's a public liability company. So where all the liability are no longer on you, they are now on the public that are investors in that company. So number 2 talks about the study of the recent approved policy of MSMEs. Okay, this is a very, very useful policy, and I want you to grab a copy. And of course, you can go to our website, www.jconsultingisl.com, to be able to get that document to read for yourself. Okay, read so that you know what you can gain from being an entrepreneur. In places like Canada, in places like the United States of America, they have an administration called the Small Business Administration. The moment you go to that, to Canada, for example, to be able to go and do a training on entrepreneurship, the moment that happens, okay, the government begins to look after you because they don't want you to go back to paid employment. Okay, don't forget that today the Bureau of Statistics and SPIDA did a joint survey to arrive at the fact that we have about 41 million MSME today in Nigeria. That represents close to about 25% of our population. So if we have a situation where we are taking care of this 25%, which is about 41 million of our population today, then I tell you that there will be less pressure on government, and there will be less pressure on government trying to do the right thing. Okay, so what over they talk about private sector, being the drivers of the economy, and what they mean is that the MSME should be the driver. So you must, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO of your company, try to look at the study of the recent approved policy of the MSME. That policy was developed in 2007 and it came into effect to play between 2021 and 2025. Okay? What are the major objectives of that policy? One is to be able to create employment. That's number one. To be able to act as a wealth generation avenue for the economy. And of course, poverty reduction. Those are the focus. But before I let go of this number 2, let me talk to you about a nano enterprise. As a nano enterprise, you must have in your employment between 1 to 2 persons. Okay? So you look at yourself now, and I want you to actually categorize yourself now. Are you a nano enterprise? Nano enterprise that you have in your employment between 1 and 2 persons. Okay? And your working capital minus land and housing is less than 3 million. Okay? So if you check your staff strength, you just engage just 1 person, or you have 2 people in your employment, and your working capital is less than 3 million, then you are said to be a nano enterprise. Then, of course, you're talking about the micro enterprise. These are the people they have in their employment between 3 to 9 persons, and their working capital, okay, fall within the range of 3 million to about 25 million naira. So check your books, and you see that your working capital, if you fall in the range of 3 to 25 million, then you are said to be a micro entrepreneur. Then, of course, you have to talk about the small enterprises that ranges between 10 to 49 persons in their employment, and their working capital is between 25 million and 100 million. And of course, you have the medium enterprises. You have from 50 to about 199 persons working in their employment, and their working capital is between 100 million and about $1 billion naira. Okay, so the moment you cross this Rubicon of 199 persons working with you, and you are moved from 200 and above, they are said to be large enterprise. And like I mentioned, that's where the Dangote of this world belong. So ask yourself now, are you a nano enterprise? Are you a micro enterprise? Okay? Are you a small enterprise, or are you a medium enterprise? Okay? Whatever category that you fall to is not a death sentence. If you are nano, for example, you should start fighting to see how you can get to small. Okay? So from small, you move to medium, and from medium, you move to large. Of course, from there, you can become a large enterprise at the end of the day. So number 3 is that CEO should ensure proper licensing and registration with relevant government agencies to be able to operate legally. Okay? So if you need to get that number, please do that. You can start as an individual, but as you progress, you can have an enterprise. Okay? You can have an enterprise registration. You can have a limited liability registration. Okay? So you must be able to follow the tradition. And of course, you can talk to us to be able to help you grow your business. Because growing what we have today as an organization, started from scratch. And today, we are a consulting firm meant to be reckoned with across the world. And we're looking up tomorrow, to be able to, replicate what we have done here in this African environment to Canada and to, of course, USA. Okay? So you must have your CAC registration. When you get to the point where it's liability, when you have a limited liability company, you are transferring the liability now. It's no longer on you as an individual. So if there's going to be any issue today with your organization, they are probably going to be talking to the organization as a body. Okay? So, and who are the regulators? Of course, CAC, you have the Federal Inland Revenue Services. Okay? Here we talk about tax matters. Ensure that you pay your tax regularly. The reason why it's important for you to pay your tax is that if you get to the point where your organization becomes global, what happens is that they're going to be asking for, are you a tax responsible organization? Okay? And the moment you are not a tax responsible organization, it means that you cannot go very far. Then, of course, we talk about number 4, which has to do with exploring opportunities for loan, grants, and other form of financing. Like I said from the intro, a lot of people feel that finance is the greatest challenge for every enterprise and every entrepreneur. Okay? So let's assume I agree with you. How and where are you going to find that funding? Okay? So today, the government is talking about the fact that they have just put in place about 110 billion for the youth. Okay? So if that happens, how are you going to be able to have access to that? So you can go today to the website of the Ministry of Youth, okay, to be able to get the guidelines for you to be able to get that. Don't forget the environment where we operate on is a kind of environment where there is no second chance. So the earlier you go and find out the conditionalities and be able to apply so that you can quickly get that. And we're told that SPIDA, Bank of Industry and the Ministry of Trade are also embarking on a grant disbursement right now. Have you applied? Okay, so beyond grants and loans that you can get from government, then I will also advise and encourage you, okay, to try to do the right thing. Make sure that you take your monies regularly to the bank so that you can participate in what we call turnover lending. Okay, in case you do not have that kind of collateral. Today, nobody asks them about collateral again because the kind of funds that is borrowing are not the kind of funds that you can collateralize. So it becomes a turnover lending where the organization becomes part of what you're doing. You have to use things like overdraft to be able to set your liquidity position right as an organization for you to be able to get the necessary funding. And again, if you're having issues with funding your organization, you can of course talk to us on the social media handles that are rolling. We're here, we're tested, we've done quite a bit of linkage of entrepreneurs to the right source of finance. So we're there to work with you and to be able to achieve that. So we move on to the number 5. We talked about the fact that every enterprise, every entrepreneur has to be aware of the advertising guidelines, okay, and restrictions by the regulating bodies. They must ensure compliance with advertising standards to be able to avoid legal issues, okay? So legal issues can come to you and, it's called contingency liabilities, okay? Those liabilities that you incur without knowing the impact it's going to have with you or your organization on the long run, okay? So you must look at your adverts, okay? Today you drive around town, you see the tax people across all over the place. Your cars are branded. You have branded billboards. Have you paid the required fees, okay? And your billboards in the appropriate places, okay? So you must be able to check all this to be compliant so that contingency liability does not fall on you, and competition can also use that against you. What do I mean by that? Today, you are having a food-related product and you don't have a NAFDAC number. Your competitor can go and report you, okay? And what will regulators do? They will come and swarm on you and take over your premises. And that can be a risk that you may not be able to survive of. So be aware of advertising guidelines, okay? Know where to put your billboards, know how to run your TV, your radio adverts. Then who are the regulators? Of course, the local governments are playing heavily here. Recall recently, the local government today has been granted autonomy. What that means that they will be looking for more an additional way to be able to get funding for them to be able to run independently as the law has been able to prescribe. Then of course you have the Advertisement Regulatory Council of Nigeria, ARCOM. Okay, so this regulatory authority put in place by the appropriate acts of the government. And of course the state government are also there. So before I round up this session, as a way of concluding, let us look at other regulators that you need to familiarize yourself with. Number 1 is the Central Bank of Nigeria. Okay, so Central Bank deals mostly with monetary policies, okay, the liquidity in the system, and they relate with the commercial banks, where you have to put all the fundings that are required. And you talk about NDIC, we talked about the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation. Recall recently that a bank was liquidated, and what does the law say? It says that, look, the insurance for every individual, both corporate and individual, comes to the amount of about 5 million naira. So what that means is that as an entrepreneur, you need to spread your money across banks, because the moment a bank gets liquidated, you cannot get more than 5 million naira. Then of course you have on the technical side, you have institutions like NOTAP. NOTAP is National Office for Technology, Acquisition and Promotion. Today, we discover that technology is the one driving most enterprises. So the regulator in that, in terms of technology acquisition, has to do with NOTAP, which is the National Office for Technology, Acquisition and of course Promotion. Then the popular one now, we talk about the FCCPC. That's the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. Okay, so I urge you not to be consumer friendly and put products that are well regulated in the market, because you can get reported and LCCPC can come after you. Because you have NCC, which has to do with Nigerian Communication Commission. Then what about NIDA? NIDA is the National Information Technology Development Agency. And of course, you have also the Nigerian Data Protection Commission, which is NDBC. So, as a way of rounding up, don't forget we discussed 5 critical ways that any MSME can stay relevant. Number 1, don't forget, observe corporate governance. Make sure you put proper corporate governance structure in place. You have a board that is working for you. Then, of course, study the recently approved policy on MSME. And I ask that you can go to our website, www.gconsultingisl.com, to be able to read more about how the framework for MSME this modern time. The CEO should be able to ensure proper licensing and regulation of the necessary government agencies. And of course, they must be able to explore opportunity for loan grants and other financial thing. They will be aware of advertising guidelines. So these are the 5 ways that you can stay relevant today. So I want to thank you all for listening to me today on this episode of MSME Clinic. So if you do have issues, please relate with us on social media and that are currently scrolling. Thank you and have a nice day as we meet.